We are live.
Yay! That means we made it to Monday. That's a good thing. I am old new dude. He is.
Richard York, Asher's Trueborn Son, and I probably sound a little less nasally or more stuffed up or whatever the word is. I mean, people usually say more nasally, but it's kind of the opposite, right? Anyway, whatever.
It'd be less nasally.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay. Hey Sanji. Nice to see you. Lizzie. I know Chris is here. Uh,
Mother
but,
Roy, chicken soup. We were discussing that before we started.
oh yes.
Is he? Yep.
There's a. I know cans of chicken soup and all that stuff. Growing up, that's what they gave you and everything. But there's a what is it, like a chicken bone broth that I had seen that just like really, if can if Campbell's chicken noodle soup is here, the chicken bone broth like is just like way up there as far as people swearing by it and everything.
Okay. Hey, we got a long one today, so we should probably get going pretty soon.
Okay, go ahead.
There's a trailer, but there's plenty of coverage of that. So go look elsewhere. Storm 23, Daenerys 2. This is Astapor Part 1. In the center of the Plaza of Pride stood a red brick. Oh, and it's heavily what's the word? Abridged because it's really long. And
No.
a yada yada yada, the sex part. Anyway.
Okay. Yeah, you start saying redacted, that involves me. Just
No,
as
it's not redacted. It's abridged. It's abridged. Anyway. In the center of the Plaza of Pride stood a red brick fountain whose water smelled of brimstone, and in the center of the fountain a monstrous harpy made of hammered bronze. 20 feet tall she reared. She had a woman's face with gilded hair, ivory eyes, and pointed ivory teeth. Water gushed yellow from her heavy breasts, but in place of arms she had the wings of a bat or a dragon. Her legs were the legs of an eagle, and behind she wore a scorpion's curled and venomous tail. And there's a lot of symbolism and imagery in this chapter.
Yeah, I think I said this
Harpy.
during book club. With the possible dragon wings, with the ivory eyes, I think that there's a lot of mythical creatures that were created by people
Sure.
to get to that weapon of mass destruction that is a dragon.
Ah,
I think
and
the harpy.
this may have been one of their experiments.
Yes, yes,
Ah,
yes.
interesting. Kind of funny considering that they consider themselves to be predating the Valerians, but of course, who knows with the history that long ago.
Well, yeah, I mean that would tie into what I'm thinking is okay. Yeah, they came
They
first.
predate dragons, sure.
Yeah, and then they perfected the what we wanted to make for a weapon of mass destruction and made the dragon. When then the harpy gets kind of put to the wayside.
Sounds good. The Harpy of Gifts, Danny thought. Old Gifts had fallen 5,000 years ago, if she remembered true. Its legions shattered by the might of young Valeria, its brick walls pulled down, its streets and buildings turned to ash and cinder by dragon flame, its very fields filled with salt, sulfur, and skulls. Preston's talked about how you would never actually sow fields with salt, and that's an invention in the 1800s. The reality is that salt was much more valuable than gemstones or precious metals back in Roman days, and nobody would have been using it to destroy fields. Like I said, that's a story that was invented in the 1800s.
Hmm.
Yet the symbol, of course, it's a story that has permeated our culture, and so it has resonance with people.
Okay.
Yet the symbol of the old empire still endured here, though this bronze monster had a heavy chain dangling from her talons and an open manacle at either end. Harpy of Gifts had a thunderbolt in her claws. This is the Harpy of Astapor. Tell the Westerosi whore to lower her eyes, the slaver Crassus Moganaclaws complained to the slave girl who spoke for him. I deal in meat, not metal. The bronze is not for sale. Tell her to look at the soldiers. Even the dim purple eyes of a sunset savage can see how magnificent my creatures are, surely. Crassus's high Valerian was twisted and thickened by the characteristic growl of Gifts, and flavored here and there with words of slaver argot. Danny understood him well enough, but she smiled and looked blankly at the slave girl as if wondering what he might have said. The good Master Crassus asks, Are they not magnificent? The girl spoke the common tongue well for one who had never been to Westeros. Though older than 10, she had the round, flat face, dusky skin, and golden eyes of Noth. The peaceful people, her folk were called. All agreed that they made the best slaves. No older than 10, our characters are often wrong. We'll get, we'll dive into that a bit more in this chapter.
Okay.
They might be adequate to my needs, Dany answered. It had been Sir Jorah's suggestion that she speak only Dothraki and the common tongue while in Astapor. My bear is more clever than he looks. Tell me if they're training. The Westerosi woman is pleased with them, but speaks no praise to keep the price down, the translator told her master. She wishes to know how they were trained. Crassus Monoclaus bobbed his head. He smelled as if he'd bathed in raspberries, this slaver, and his jutting red-black beard glistened with oil. He has larger breasts than I do, Dany reflected. She could see them through the thin sea-green silk with the gold-fringed tokar he wound about his body and over one shoulder. His left hand held the tokar in place as he walked, while his right clasped a short leather whip. Are all Westerosi pigs so ignorant? All the world knows that the Unsullied are masters of spear and shield and short sword. He gave Dany a broad smile. Tell her what she would know, slave, and be quick about it. The day is hot. That much at least is no lie. A matched pair of slave girls stood behind them, holding a striped silk awning over their heads. But even in the shade, Dany felt lightheaded, and Crassus was perspiring freely. Even through the thickness of her sandals, she could feel the warmth of the red bricks underfoot. Waves of heat rose off them, shimmering to make the stepped pyramids of Astapor around the plaza seem half a dream.
See, isn't this like the first time we see her really feeling the effects of the heat?
Oh, that is interesting. You're right. That she's supposed to be some. I mean, we've always been told that Targaryens seem to be somewhat heat resistant, but it's interesting that Dany seems to be feeling it. Yeah, that's interesting.
Could it be the distance between her and her dragons now? Because they're at the boat and that she's in town?
I don't know, maybe.
Okay.
It's a good theory. If the Unsullied felt the heat, however, they gave no hint of it. 1,000 had been marched out of their barracks for her inspection, drawn up in 10 ranks of 100 before the fountain and its great bronze harpy. They stood stiffly at attention, their stony eyes fixed straight ahead. They wore naught but white linen clouts knotted about their loins, and conical bronze helms topped with a sharpened spike a foot tall. Crassus had commanded them to lay down their spears and shields and doff their sword belts and quilted tunics, so the Queen of Westeros might better inspect the lean hardness of their bodies. They are chosen young for size and speed and strength. They begin their training at 5. Remember this, they begin their training at 5. Every day they train from dawn to dusk until they've mastered the short sword, the shield, and the 3 spears. The training is most rigorous, Your Grace. Only 1 boy in 3 survives it. This is well known. Among the Unsullied, it is said that on the day they win their spiked cap, the worst is done with, for no duty that will ever fall to them could be as hard as their training. Although I guess only 1 boy in 3 fails to survive it if they're brothers of the Sunday. But anyway, Crassus Monoclaus supposedly spoke no word of the common tongue, but he bobbed his head as he listened, and from time to time gave the slave girl a poke with the end of his lash. Tell her that these have been standing here for a day and a night, with no food nor water. Tell her that they will stand until they drop if I should command it. And when 999 have collapsed to die upon the bricks, the last will stand there still and never move until his own death claims him. Such is their courage. Tell her that.
Hey, I got a quick question. With the peaceful people of Noth, why would those Unsullied? 2 brothers make it to be Unsullied?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Okay.
I mean, my point is that we're later going to find out that the youngest that are fully trained are at least 14. So it's at least 9 years of training. And they talk about how it's many years of training. And if she's no older than 10 and she's known her brothers, and they sure seem like they're fully trained, right? In fact, one of them leads the Mother's Men and is one of Dany's leaders and Barristan's leaders and trusted advisors. Like they seem like they're old and fully trained, which implies that, and they remember their names, and she remembers their names, and she remembers them well, right? So that implies that she is way older than Ted. Anyway, just worth noting. Right, she looks like she's older than 10.
Potion? Could she be given the same potion that the waif has been taking?
or it's possible that what is it? What's the name of the Kevron? What's the name of the children of the forest of Essos?
Uh,
If Ibn Kevron or something like that.
I can't remember.
I don't know how to pronounce it, but you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, the
Yeah,
forest,
yeah.
the children of the forest of Essos. Um, the Ifekevron, that's it. Ifekevron, it's Ifuevron. Ifekevron or woodswalkers are basically the children of the forest of Essos, and so it's possible that just as the Cranigmen are supposed to have children of the forest blood, maybe she's Ifekevron or part Ifekevron and much longer lived.
Okay.
Anyway, that's the best theory I've heard on explaining that.
Oh, that would
No,
possibly mean that she could be older than her brothers.
right, absolutely, and or yeah, sure. Maybe she stopped growing and so forth, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, um, and it's also, I mean, the more straightforward interpretation is that which doesn't make a whole lot of sense because they only trained them young supposedly, but one interpretation, and we know, as I said, that they're full grown and older,
Right.
but one interpretation, which I say doesn't make any sense because they're obviously taken young, is that um, is that her brothers had barely started the training, and one of them died right away because he like refused to go along with things right away or something. I don't know. I mean, you could try to make it work because she does take the untrained, right?
Hmm.
There are ways that you can make it work where she's not mysteriously older than Ted, but I think it's actually more likely that she's a lot older than Ted.
Yeah. I tend to agree on that. Sammy agrees too.
Yep. I call that madness, not courage, said Arston Whitebeard when the solemn little scribe was done. What madness is this? Anyway, he tapped the end of his hardwood staff against the bricks, tap, tap, as if to tell his displeasure. The old man had not wanted to sail to Astapor, nor did he favor buying the slave army. The Queen should hear all sides before reaching a decision. That was why Dany had brought him with her to the Plaza of Pride, not to keep her safe. Her blood riders would do that well enough. So Jorah Mormont she had left aboard Valerian to guard her people and her dragons. What madness is this? Says Lizzie. What did the smelly old man say? The slaver demanded of his translator. When she told him, he smiled and said, Inform the savages that we call this obedience. Others may be stronger or quicker or larger than the Unsullied. Some few may even equal their skill with sword and spear and shield, but nowhere between the seas will you ever find any more obedient. Sheep are obedient, said Arsene when the words had been translated. He had some Valyrian as well, though not so much as Dany, but like her, he was feigning ignorance. Crassus Monaclaws showed his big white teeth when that was rendered back to him. A word from me and these sheep would spill his stinking old bowels on the bricks. Good luck trying that, anyway. But do not say that. Tell them that these creatures are more dogs than sheep. Do they eat dogs or horse in these seven kingdoms? They prefer pigs and cows, your worship. Beef, frog, food for unwashed savages. Ignoring them all, Dany walked slowly down the line of slave soldiers. The girls followed close behind with a silk awning to keep her in the shade, but the 1,000 men before her enjoyed no such protection. So does this mean that Krasnus is now in the sun? Anyway, or is he being forced to follow her? I don't know. I mean, it's implied that she's right next to him the whole time, so maybe he follows her. I don't know. More than half had the copper skins and almond eyes of Dothraki and Lazarene, but she saw men of the free cities in the ranks as well, along with pale Carthene, ebon-faced Summer Islanders, and others whose origin she could not guess.
How can they
And
be
some, had-
pale if they're in the sun all the time?
yeah, why are Carthene pale is kind of weird too, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. And some had skins of the same amber hue as Crassus Monaclaws, and the bristly red-black hair that marked the ancient folk of Gis, who named themselves the Harpy's sons. They still even their own kind. It should not have surprised her that the Dothraki did the same when Kalasar met Kalasar in the Sea of Grass. Some of the soldiers were tall and some were short. They ranged in age from 14 to 20, she judged. So we know the training takes at least 9 years. Marcellin is one of Dany's and Barristan's top advisors and the leader of the Mother's Men. We've mentioned one of Missandei's brothers didn't survive the training, and of course the other one will be murdered by the Sons of the Harpy. They don't sound like they are among the young, untrained, unsullied to me. And if Missandei remembers her brother, she's a lot older than Ted.
All right.
Girl Nettles, hey!
Hey, hey, girl.
Their cheeks were smooth and their eyes all the same. be they black or brown or blue or gray or amber. They're like no one man. They are like one man, Dany thought, until she remembered that they were no men at all. The Unsullied were eunuchs, every one of them. Why do you cut them? She asked Crassus through the slave girl. Whole men are stronger than eunuchs, I've always heard. A eunuch who was cut young will never have the brute strength of one of your Westerosi knights. This is true, said Crassus Monoclaws when the question was put to him. A bull is strong as well, but bulls die every day in the fighting pits. The girl of 9 killed one not 3 days past in Jothiel's pit. The Unsullied have something better than strength, tell her. They have discipline. We fight in the fashion of the old empire, yes. They are the lockstep legions of old Gis come again. Absolutely obedient, absolutely loyal, and utterly without fear. Dany listened patiently to the translation. Even the bravest men fear death and maiming, Arsene said when the girl was done. Crassus smiled again when he heard that. Tell the old man that he smells of piss and needs a stick to hold him up. Truly, your worship? He poked her with his lash. No, not truly. Are you a girl or a ghost to ask such folly? Say that Unsullied are not men. Say that death means nothing to them, and may mean less than nothing. He stopped before a thick-set man who had the look of Lazar about him, and brought his whip up sharply, laying a line of blood across one copper cheek. The eunuch blinked and stood there, bleeding. Would you like another? Asked Crassus. If it please your worship. It was hard to pretend not to understand. Dany laid a hand on Crassus's arm before he could raise the whip again. Tell the good master that I see how strong his Unsullied are, and how bravely they suffer pain. Crassus chuckled when he heard her words in Valyrian. Tell this ignorant whore of a Westerner that courage has nothing to do with it. The good master says that was not courage, your grace. Tell her to open those slut's eyes of hers. He begs you attend this carefully, your grace. Crassus moved to the next eunuch in line, a towering youth with the blue eyes and flaxen hair of bliss. Your sword, he said. The eunuch knelt, unsheathed the blade, and offered it up hilt first. It was a short sword, made more for stabbing than for slashing, but the edge looked razor sharp. Stand, Crassus commanded. Your worship, the eunuch stood, and Crassus Monoclaws slid the sword slowly up his torso, leaving a thin red line across his belly and between his ribs. Then he jabbed the sword point in beneath a wide pink nipple and began to work it back and forth. What is he doing? Dany demanded of the girl as the blood ran down the man's chest. Tell the cow to stop her bleeding, said Crassus without waiting for the translation. This will do him no great harm. Men have no need of nipples, eunuchs even less so. The nipple hung by a thread of skin. He slashed and sent it tumbling to the bricks, leaving behind a round red eye copiously weeping blood. The eunuch did not move until Crassus offered him back his sword hilt first. Here, I'm done with you. This one is pleased to have served you. Crassus turned back to Dany. They feel no pain, you see. Range from age 14 to 20, got it. I would imagine men aged 20 to 30 would fight just as well. And they're all trained from 5, so they've all been trained for at least 9 years. And Missandei is supposedly no older than 10, but she remembers her brothers who've been through this 9 to 15 years of training, and they remember their names, and so it's very suspicious that she's actually 10 years old. She looks to be no older than 10, but she's almost certainly much older.
I got a quick question.
Yep.
Do they sell out of Unsullied as they get older, or as they get older and not sold if they're less as their
I'm sure they sell
younger
the oldest
replacement?
first.
Are they killed because they're no longer?
I'm guessing you sell the oldest first and every time, so that doesn't happen, right? And
I would
but you
think.
may be right that eventually they get, if there's a lack of demand, you may wind up with a surplus and eventually have a problem. Sure.
Right. Because I mean, they got a butt ton of Unsullied here.
But I doubt they let you choose. I would think they would give you the oldest. I mean, this happens to be just a random collection for an inspect, not the ones they're actually selling necessarily. All right, where were we? This one is pleased to have served you. Crassus turned back to Dany. They feel no pain, you see. How can that be? She demanded through the scribe. The wine of courage. It isn't a true wine at all, but made from deadly nightshade, bloodfly larva, black lotus root, and many secret things. They drink it with every meal from the day they are cut, and with each passing year feel less and less. It makes them fearless in battle, nor can they be tortured. Tell the savage her secrets are safe with the Unsullied. She may set them to guard her counsels and even her bedchamber, and never a worry as to what they might overhear. In Yunkai and Marine, eunuchs are often made by removing a boy's testicles but leaving the penis. Such a creature is infertile, yet often still capable of erection. Only trouble can come of this. We remove the penis as well, leaving nothing. The Unsullied are the purest creatures on the earth. He gave Dany and Arston another of his broad white smiles. I have heard that in the sun-set kingdoms, men take solemn vows to keep chaste and father no children, but live only for their duty. Is it not so? Are there any competing slave soldier stores? I don't think there will be a lack of demand. Yeah, exactly. I think that as long as they arrange to sell the oldest, they probably don't have a problem.
Yeah.
Yes, there actually are competing slave soldier stores. We are told we're told of at least one, but I don't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, there definitely is at least one other one that's not as good, but available. I'm pretty. It might even be in this chapter, and if we come across it, we'll point it out. Oh, actually, it might be right here. In Yunkai and Marine, eunuchs are often made by removing a boy. Oh wait, no, we already did that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, so maybe that's it. In Yunkai and Marine, they may also sell soldiers. I imagine. It is, Arston said when the question was put. There are many such orders. The Maesters of the Citadel, the Septons and Septas who serve the Seven, the Silent Sisters of the Dead, the King's Guard, and the Night's Watch. So notice that he never uses the word brother in that entire paragraph. Anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just interesting to me that so we'll get there right now. Poor things, growled the slaver after the translation. Men were not made to live thus. Their days are a torment of temptation. Any fool must see, and no doubt most succumb to their baser selves. Not so for our Unsullied. They are wed to their swords in a way that your sworn brothers cannot hope to match. No woman can ever tempt them, nor any man. So he specifically knows of the King's Guard or possibly the Night's Watch, and Barristan never mentioned the word brothers.
Right.
I just found that interesting that he's actually aware of the sworn brothers, and he's probably referring to the King's Guard.
Yeah.
His scroll conveyed the essence of his speech more politely. There are other ways to tempt men besides the flesh, Arston Whitebeard objected when she was done. Men, yes, but not Unsullied. Plunder interests them no more than rape. They own nothing but their weapons. We do not even permit them names. No names? Dany frowned at the little scribe. Can that be what the good master said? They have no names? It is so, your grace. Crassus stopped in front of the Giscari, who might have been his taller, fitter brother, and flicked his lash, a small bronze disc on the sword belt at his feet. There is his name. Ask the whore of Westeros whether she could read Giscari glyphs. When Dany admitted that she could not, the slaver turned to the Unsullied. What is your name? He demanded. This one's name is Red Flea, your worship. The girl repeated their exchange in common tongue. And yesterday, what was it? Black Rat, your worship. The day before, Brown Flea, your worship. Before that, this one does not recall, your worship. Blue Toad, perhaps, or Blue Worm. Tell her all their names are such, Crassus commanded the girl. It reminds them that by themselves they are vermin. The name discs are thrown in an empty cask at duty's end, each dawn plucked up again at random. More madness, said Arston when he heard. How can any man possibly remember a new name every day? What madness is this again? Anyway, those who cannot are cold in training, along with those who cannot run all day in full pack, scale a mountain in the black of night, walk across a bed of coals, or slay an infant. So I don't know if any of those will become an issue in the story, but it's kind of interesting, right? Scale a mountain in the black of night, especially. Taking someone's ability to have a name is diabolical world building. Yes. Dany's mouth surely twisted at that. Did he see, or is he blind as well as cruel? She turned away quickly, trying to keep her face unmasked until she heard the translation. Only then did she allow herself to say, "Whose infants did they slay?" Taking someone's name is making them no one. There goes that no one theme again. Yep.
Hey, just to point out earlier, like, did he go with her because the girls were covering Dany? Apparently,
Yeah.
he was walking with her with the Unsullied.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, because she's sometimes she'll tug on his arm and things, right? So it's definitely the case that he's always right next to her.
They're together.
Or at least it's implied that they're together, and so I assume that he came with her.
Yeah.
To win his spiked cap, an Unsullied must go to the slave marts with a silver mark, find some wailing newborn, and kill it before its mother's eyes. In this way, we make certain that there's no weakness left in them. She was feeling faint, the heat, she tried to tell herself. You take a babe from its mother's arms, kill it as she watches, and pay for her pain with a silver coin? When the translation was made for him, Crassus Modaclaws laughed aloud. What a soft, mewling fool this one is! Tell the whore of Westeros the mark is for the child's owner, not the mother. The Unsullied are not permitted to steal. He tapped his whip against his leg. Tell her that few ever fail that test. The dogs are harder for them, it must be said. We give each boy a puppy on the day that he is cut. At the end of the first year, he is required to strangle it, and he who cannot are killed and fed to the surviving dogs. Makes for a good, strong lesson, we find. Arson Whitebeard tapped the end of his staff on the bricks as he listened to that. Tap, tap, tap. Slow and steady. Tap, tap, tap. Then he saw him turn his eyes away as if he could not bear to look at Krasnus any longer. The good master has said that these eunuchs cannot be tempted with coin or flesh, Dany told the girl. But if some enemy of mine should offer them freedom for betraying me, they would kill him out of hand and bring her his head. Tell her that, the slaver answered. Other slaves may steal and hoard up silver in hopes of buying freedom, but an Unsullied would not take it if the little mare offered it as a gift. They have no life outside their duty. They are soldiers, and that is all. It is soldiers I need, Dany admitted. Tell her as well she came to ask for that. Ask her how large an army she wishes to buy.
They won't take coin to buy freedom and all that stuff, but Grey Wind is taking the name Grey Wind because that was the day that Dany freed him. So maybe there's more dreams of freedom than
There's going to be another hint here that they're not as good as they're not as pure as he says here in a second. I'll point it out.
Okay.
How many Unsullied do you have to sell? 8,000, fully trained and available at present. We sell them only by the unit, you should know, by the 1,000 or the century. Once we sold by the 10, and in fact right here, as household guards, but that proved unsound. 10 is too few. They mingle with other slaves, even freemen, and forget who and what they are. So these uncorruptible soldiers are apparently too easily corruptible. Crassus waited for that to be rendered in the common tongue and then continued. This beggar, it's almost like on cue, right? As you're asking anyway. Crassus waited for that to be rendered in the common tongue and then continued. This beggar queen must understand. Such wonders do not come cheaply. In Yunkai Marine, slave swordsmen can be had for less than the price of their swords. Yeah, so it was Yunkai Marine. That's what I thought. But Unsullied are the finest foot in all the world, and each represent many years of training. Till they are like Valyrian steel, folded over and over and hammered for years on end until they are stronger and more resilient than any metal on earth. I know of Valyrian steel, said Dany. Ask the good master if the Unsullied have their own officers. You must set your own officers over them. We train them to obey, not to think. If it's which she wants, let her buy scribes. So that implies that he thinks Missandei and the scribes are smart. But anyway.
Yeah.
And their gear? Sword, shield, spear, sandals, and quilted tunic are included, said Crassus, and the spiked caps, to be sure. They'll wear such armor as you wish, but you must provide it. Dany could think of no other questions. She looked at Arson. You've lived long in the world, Whitebeard. Now that you have seen them, what do you say? I say no, your grace, the old man answered at once. Why? She asked. Speak freely. Dany thought she knew what he would say, but she wanted the slave girl to hear so Crassus Modaclaus might hear later. My queen, said Arson, there have been no slaves in the Seven Kingdoms for thousands of years. The old gods and the new alike hold slavery to be an abomination, evil. If you should land in Westeros, the head of a slave army, many good men will oppose you for no other reason than that. You will do great harm to your cause and to the honor of your house. Yet I must have some army, Dany said. The boy Joffrey will not give me the Iron Throne for asking politely. When the day comes that you raise your banners, half of Westeros will be with you, Whitebeard promised. Your brother Rhaegar is still remembered with great love. And my father, Dany said. The old man hesitated before saying, King Aerys is also remembered. Every use of Dany's parents' names replaces your father or your mother with the formal title and name, distancing them from her. See Triplet Figures episode 4. He gave the realm many years of peace, your grace. You have no need of slaves. Magister Illyrio can keep you safe while your dragons grow, and send secret envoys across the narrow sea on your behalf to sound out the High Lords for your cause. Those same High Lords who abandoned my father to the Kingslayer and bent the knee to Robert the Usurper? Even those who bent their knees may yearn in their hearts for the return of the dragons, like I do. No, anyway. That's what he's probably thinking. May, said Dany. That was such a slippery word, May, in any language. She turned back to Crassus Modaclaus and the slave girl. I must consider carefully, the slaver shrugged. Tell her to consider quickly. There are many other buyers. Only 3 days past, I showed the same Unsullied to a Corsair king who hopes to buy them all. The Corsair wanted only 100, your worship, Dany heard the slave girl say. He poked her with the end of the whip. Corsairs are all liars. He'll buy them all. Tell her that, girl. Dany knew she would take more than 100 if she took any at all. Remind your good master of who I am. Remind him that I am Daenerys Stormborn, mother of dragons, the unburnt, trueborn queen of the Seven Kingdoms of Westeros. My blood is the blood of Aegon the Conqueror, and of old Valyria before him. Yet her words did not move the plump, perfumed slaver, even when rendered in his own ugly tongue. Old Gis ruled an empire when the Valyrians were still fucking sheep, he growled at the poor little scribe. And we are the sons of the Harpy, he gave a shrug. My tongue is wasted wagging at women. East or west, it makes no matter. They cannot decide until they have been pampered and flattered and stuffed with sweetmeats. Well, if this is my fate, so be it. Tell the whore that if she requires a guide to our sweet city, Crassus Modaclaus will gladly serve her. and service her as well. She's more woman than she looks. Master Crassus would be most pleased to show you Astapor while you ponder, your grace, the translator said. I will feed her jellied dog brains and a fine rich stew of red octopus and unborn puppy. He wiped his lips. Many delicious dishes can be had here, he says. Tell her how pretty the pyramids are at night, the slaver growled. Tell her I will lick honey off her breasts, or allow her to lick honey off mine if she prefers. Astapor is most beautiful at dusk, your grace, said the slave girl. The good masters light silk lanterns on every terrace, so all the pyramids glow with colored lights. Pleasure barges ply the worm, playing soft music and calling to the little islands for food and wine and other delights. Ask her if she wishes to view our fighting pits, Crassus added. Dokor's pit has a fine folly scheduled for the evening. A bear and 3 small boys. One boy will be rolled in honey, one in blood, and one in rotting fish. And she may wager on which the bear will eat first. Tap, 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 Dany heard. Arthur Whitebeard's face was still, but his staff beat out his rage. Tap, tap, tap. She made herself smile. I have my own bear in Balerion, she told the translator, and he may well eat me if I do not return to him. See, said Crassus when her words were translated, it's not the woman who decides. It is this man she runs to, as ever. Thank the good master for his patient kindness, Dany said. Tell him that I will think on all I learned here. She gave her arm to Ice and Whitebeard to lead her back across the plaza to her litter. Ago and Jogo fell into either side of them, walking with the bow-legged swagger all the horse lords affected were forced to dismount, stride the earth like common mortals. Dany climbed into her litter, frowning, and beckoned Arston to climb in beside her. A man as old as him should not be walking in such heat. She did not close the curtains as they got under way. With the sun beating down so fiercely on this city of red brick, every stray breeze was to be cherished, even if it did come with a swirl of fine red dust. Besides, I needed to see. Astapor was a queer city, even to the eyes of one who had walked within the house of dust and bathed in the womb of the world beneath the mother of mountains. All the streets were made of the same red brick that paved the plaza. So too were the stepped pyramids, the deep-dug fighting pits with their rings of descending seats, the sulphurous fountains and gloomy wine caves, and the ancient walls that encircled them. So many bricks, she thought, but so old and crumbling. Their fine red dust was everywhere, dancing down the gutters at each gust of wind. Make way, Jogo shouted as he rode before her litter. Make way for the mother of dragons! But when he uncoiled the great silver-handled whip that Dany had given him, made to crack it in the air, she leaned out and told him nay. Not in this place, blood of my blood, she said in his own tongue. These bricks have heard too much of the sound of whips. The streets had been largely deserted when they had set out for the port that morning, and scarcely seemed more crowded now. A naked boy with peeling skin sat in a dry brick gutter, picking his nose and staring sullenly at some ants in the street. He lifted his head at the sound of hooves and gaped as a column of mounted guards trotted by in a cloud of red dust and brittle laughter. Bareheaded, each man had teased and oiled and twisted his stiff red-black hair into some fantastic shape, horns and wings and blades and even grasping hands. So it looked like some troop of demons escaped from the seventh hell.
Every time they talk about the shaping of their hair, I always think of Wolverine's hair in the comic books. Never mind.
Sure. Bricks and blood built Astapor, Whitebeard murmured at her side, and bricks and blood are people. What is that? Dany asked him, curious. An old rhyme a maester taught me when I was a boy. I never knew how true it was. The bricks of Astapor are red with the blood of the slaves who make them. I can well believe that, said Dany. Then leave this place before your heart turns to brick as well. Sail this very night on the evening tide. Would that I could, thought Dany. When I leave Astapor, it must be with an army, Sir Jorah says. Sir Jorah was a slaver himself, your grace, the old man reminded her. There are sellswords in Pentos and Muir and Tyrosh you can hire. Man who kills for coin has no honor, but at least they are no slaves. Find your army there, I beg you. My brother visited Pentos, Muir, Bravos, near all the free cities. Magisters and archons fed him wine and promises, but his soul was starved to death. A man cannot sup from the beggar's bowl all his life and stay a man. I had my taste in Karth. That was enough. I will not come to Pentos bowl in hand. Better to come a beggar than a slaver, Arston said. There speaks one who has been neither. Dany's nostrils flared. Do you know what it is like to be sold, squire? I do. My brother sold me to Khal Drogo for the promise of a golden crown. Well, Drogo crowned him in gold, though not as he had wished. And my sun and stars made a queen of me. But if he'd been a different man, it might have been much otherwise. Do you think I've forgotten how it felt to be afraid? Whitebeard bowed his head. Your grace, I did not mean to give offense. Only lies offend me, never honest counsel. Dany patted Arston's spotted hand to reassure him. I have a dragon's temper, that's all. You must not let it frighten you. That could be some foreshadowing.
I was just
I'll take
thinking that.
Masande as a 10-year-old. She reads like a servant, a savant with photographic memory. That'll explain how she learns languages so fast and why her memory is so long. Yeah, but still, I mean, 9 years of training, she clearly knows her brothers. They sure seem like they've been through the training. I think
Well,
it's
I
more
mean,
likely that in a world of magic where people seem to have magical aging, and I think it's more likely that she's actually older than she looks.
right. So 9 years of training, that would put her at 1 years old where they were taken,
Uh-huh. Right.
and all the time it took her to learn all these languages. It's
Right.
not like
Well,
that she would
I
be
mean,
able to. She wouldn't be able to see her brothers pretty much ever again while they're there, unless that she's standing there and the
yeah.
big man is
I mean,
walking by.
Marcelin Marcelin's probably at least 16 because, and they're taking it 5, like, which implies at least 11 years. And the reason I say that is Marcelin is specifically, the head of the Mother's Men and one of Barris's trusted advisors, one of Dany's trusted advisors. It's I just don't see him as being as trusted as he is unless he's reached the age of
Right.
maturity. So,
Yeah.
and they only take them and they train them at 5. So the implication is that I've talked to a savant who remembers their first memory at 1 year old. I mean, I don't think it's an unreasonable interpretation. It's just not I don't think it's the most likely interpretation.
Yeah.
I definitely think we're intended to think that, oh well, maybe they didn't complete their training. Maybe they're amongst the young, her brothers are amongst the young, that the untrained, and maybe they took them in when they were older than 5 and so forth. I mean, I think we're definitely supposed to think that it's possible that she
Yeah.
really is 10. I'm very skeptical.
Yeah.
Where were we?
I shall try to remember.
Oh yeah. I was saying that sounds like, yeah, that sounds like foreshadowing of her temper. We will see. I sure hope so. I shall try and remember. Whitebeard smiled. He has a good face and great strength to him, Dany thought. She could understand why Sir Jorah mistrusted the old man so. Could he be jealous that I found another man to talk to? Unbidden, thoughts went back to the night of Balerion when the exiled knight had kissed her. Should never have done that. He's thrice my age and of too low a birth for me, and I never gave him leave. No true knight would ever kiss a queen without her leave. She'd taken care never to be alone with Sir Jorah after that, keeping her handmaids with her aboard ship, sometimes her blood riders. He wants to kiss me again. I see it in his eyes. What Dany wanted she could not begin to say, but Jorah's kiss had woken something in her, something that had been sleeping since Khal Drogo died. Lying in bed in her narrow bunk, she found herself wondering how it would be to have a man squeezed in beside her in place of her handmaid. The thought was more exciting than it should have been. Sometimes she would close her eyes and dream of him, but it was never Sir Jorah Mormont she dreamed of. Her lover was always younger and more comely, but his face remained a shifting shadow. And then yada yada yada. Here he never said a thing, only curled back up and went back to sleep the instant the thing
Hey,
was done.
her lover was always younger and more comely.
Uh-huh.
Thought his face, though his face
Shifting
remained a
shadow.
shifting shadow. I think that's some foreshadowing right there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, and maybe it implies something about maybe it implies something about Dario. I don't know. It could be that Dario's a faceless man, for example. I don't know.
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah. People say Jon Snow or Aegon, and I mean certainly those are the most likely of her future lovers that we see. Right, major
Yeah.
characters on the that are likely to have their own factions and so forth. Right. So
Yeah.
whether it's
The shifting
whether it's
shadows, I think, is probably the biggest clue. It's just trying to figure out what that shifting shadows mean.
right, and that's why I'm wondering if it actually implies that somebody is a faceless man that she's with or something,
Yeah.
or a glamour.
Or
Right, and Dario, we've talked before about how there's hints that Dario is actually really, really, really old, um, and meaning magically old.
mm,
So the theory goes basically that we know that Melisandre is with years beyond count, what we know for the show and so forth, that she's likely seriously older than she looks, right?
right.
And she tries to find Jon Snow is her lover of the show, so it can't be wrong. Oh, of course, Pod. Anyway, certainly Jon's likely to become King of the North and foreshadowed to become King of the North, and so he's likely to have a faction and to be somebody she would want to ally with potentially, right? Aegon
Yeah.
obviously has his supporters and obviously wants to marry her. So she sees Jon Snow, the fire in his face is shifting. I like that. Okay, Jon is the shifting shadow. Okay, that's good. I like that, girl knows. That's
Yeah.
good. That's a good one. I like
That
that. Ties the language together. Yeah, excellent.
Very nice.
Um, you can't yada 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 sex. You yada 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 the best part. No, I didn't. I told you about the bisque. Anyway, the next day it all seemed a dream. It's Drogo I want. My sun and stars, Dany reminded herself. Drogo was dead, though. She thought these feelings had died with him there in the Red Waste, but one treacherous kiss had somehow brought them back to life. He should never have kissed me. He presumed too much, and I permitted it. It must never happen again. Closer to the bay, the city presented a fairer face. The great brick pyramids lined the shore, the largest 400 feet high. All manner of trees and vines and flowers grew on their broad terraces, and the winds that swirled around them smelled green and fragrant. Another gigantic harpy stood atop the gate. This one made of baked red clay and crumbling visibly, with no more than a stub of her scorpion's tail remaining. The chain she grasped in her clay claws was old iron, rotten with rust. Ago helped Dany down from her litter. Strong Belwas was seated in a massive piling, eating a great haunch of brown roasted meat. Dog, he said happily when he saw Dany. Good dog, and Astapor. Little queen. Eat? He offered it with a greasy grin. That is kind of you, Belwas, but no. Dany had eaten dog in other places at other times, but just now all she could think of was the Unsullied and their stupid puppies. She swept past the huge eunuch and up the plank onto the deck of Balerion. Sir Jorah Mormont stood waiting for her. Your Grace, he said, bowing his head, the slavers have come and gone, 3 of them with a dozen scribes and as many slaves to lift and fetch. They crawled over every foot of our holds and made note of all we had. He walked her aft. How many men do they have for sale? None. Was it Mormont she was angry with, or the city with its sullen heat, its stinks, its sweats, and crumbling bricks? They sell eunuchs, not men. Eunuchs made of brick, like the rest of Astapor. Shall I buy 8,000 brick eunuchs with dead eyes that never move, who kill suckling babes for the sake of a spiked hat and strangle their own dogs? They don't even have names, so don't call them men, sir. Khaleesi, he said, taken aback by her fury. The Unsullied are chosen as boys in trade. I've heard all I care of their training. Dany could feel tears welling in her eyes, sudden and unwanted. Her hand flashed up and cracked Sir Jorah hard across the face. It was either that or cry. Mormont touched the cheek she'd slapped. If I've displeased my queen, you have. You've displeased me greatly, sir. If you were my true knight, you would never have brought me to this vile sty. If you're my true knight, you would never have kissed me or looked at my breast the way you did, or as your grace commands, I shall tell Captain Grolio to make ready to sail on the evening tide for some sty less vile. No, said Dany. Grolio watched them from the forecastle, and his crew was watching too. Whitebeard, her blood riders, Jeekwe, everyone had stopped what they were doing at the sound of the slap. I want to sail now, not at the tide. I want to sail far and fast and never look back, but I can't, can I? There are 8,000 brick eunuchs for sale, and I must find some way to buy them. With that, she left them and went below. Behind the carved wooden door of the captain's cabin, her dragons were restless. Drogon raised his head and screamed, pale smoke venting from his nostrils, and Viserion flapped at her, trying to perch at her shoulder, as he had when he was smaller. No, Dany said, trying to shrug him off gently. You're too big for that now, sweetling. But the dragon coiled his white and gold tail around one arm and dug black claws in the fabric of her sleeve, clinging tightly. Helpless, she sank into Grolio's great leather chair, giggling. They've been wild while you were gone, Khaleesi, Irri told her. Viserion clawed splinters from the door, do you see? And Drogon made to escape when the slaver men came to see them. When I grabbed his tail to hold him back, he turned and bit me. She showed Dany the marks of his teeth on her hand. Did any of them try to burn their way free? That was the thing that frightened Dany the most. No, Khaleesi. Drogon breathed his fire, but in the empty air. The slaver men feared to come near him. She kissed Irri's hand where Drogon had bitten it. I'm sorry he hurt you. Dragons are not meant to be locked up in a small ship's cabin. Dragons are like horses in this, Irri said, and riders too. The horses scream below, Khaleesi, and kick at the wooden walls. I hear them. And Jeekwe says the old woman and the little one scream too when you're not here. They do not like this water cart. They do not like the black salt sea. Sorry, Dany, only one person gets to actually be happy at the end of all this. Unfortunately for you, I think that may be Arya. I know, Dany said. I do, I know. My Khaleesi is sad? Yes, Dany admitted, sad and lost. Should I pleasure the Khaleesi? Dany stepped away from her. No, Irri, you do not need to do that. What happened that night when you woke? You're no bed slave. I freed you, remember? I'm handmaid to the mother of dragons, the girl said. It is great honor to please my Khaleesi. I don't want that, she insisted. I don't. She turned away sharply. Leave me now. I want to be alone, to think. Dusk had begun to settle over the waters of Slaver's Bay before Dany returned to the deck. She stood by the rail and looked out over Astapor. From here it looks almost beautiful, she thought. The stars were coming out above, and the silk lanterns below, just as Crassus's translator had promised. The brick pyramids were all glimmery with light, but it's dark below in the streets and plazas and fighting pits. and it is the darkest of all the barracks, where some little boy is feeding scraps to the puppy they gave him when they took away his manhood. There was a soft step behind her. Khaleesi, his voice. When I speak frankly, Danny did not turn. She could not bear to look at him just now. If she did, she might well slap him again, or cry, or kiss him, and never know which was right, which was wrong, and which was madness. What madness is this? Say what you will, sir. When Aegon the Dragon stepped ashore in Westeros, the kings of Vale and Rock and Reach did not rush to hand him their crowns. If you mean to sit his iron throne, you must win it as he did, with steel and dragon fire. And that will mean blood on your hands before the thing is done. Blood and fire, thought Dany, the words of House Targaryen. She'd known them all her life. The blood of my enemies I will shed gladly. The blood of innocence is another matter. 8,000 unsullied they would offer me. 8,000 dead babes. 8,000 strangled dogs. Your Grace, said Jorah Mormont, I saw King's Landing after the sack. Babes were butchered that day as well, and old men and children at play. More women were raped than you could count. There is a savage beast in every man, and when you hand that man a sword or spear and send him forth to war, the beast stirs. The scent of blood is all it takes to wake him. Yet I've never heard of these unsullied raping, nor putting a city to the sword, nor even plundering, save at the express command of those who lead them. Brick they may be, as you say, but if you buy them henceforth, the only dogs they'll kill are those you want dead. And you do have some dogs you want dead, as I recall. The usurper's dogs. Yes. Then he gazed off at the soft-colored lights, with the cool salt breeze caress her. You speak of sacking cities. Answer me this, sir. Why have the Dothraki never sacked this city? She pointed. Look at the walls. You can see where they've begun to crumble. There and there. You see any guards in those towers? I don't. Are they hiding, sir? I saw these sons of the Harpy today. All their proud, high-born warriors. They dressed in linen skirts, and the fiercest thing about them was their hair. Even a modest Khalasar could crack this Astapor like a nut and spill out the rotted meat inside. So tell me, why is that ugly harpy not sitting beside the God's Way and Vest Dothrak among the other stolen gods? You have a dragon's eye, Khaleesi. That's plain to see. I wanted an answer, not a compliment. There are two reasons. Astapor's brave defenders are so much chaff. It's true. Old names and fat persons who dress up as Giscari scourges to pretend they still rule a vast empire. Everyone is a high officer. On feast days, they fight mock wars in the pits to demonstrate what brilliant commanders they are. But it's the eunuchs who do the dying. All the same, any enemy wanting to sack Astapor would have to know that they'd be facing Unsullied. The slavers would turn out the whole garrison of the city's defense. The Dothraki have not ridden against Unsullied since they left their brains at the gates of Qohor. And the second reason, Dany asked? Who would attack Astapor? Sir Jorah asked. Meereen and Yunkai are rivals, but not enemies. The Doom destroyed Valeria. The folk of the eastern hinterlands are all Giscari, and beyond the hills lies Lazar, the Landmen, as your Dothraki call them, a notably unwarlike people. Yes, she agreed, but north of the slave cities is the Dothraki Sea, and 24 mighty cows who like nothing more than sacking cities and carrying off their people into slavery. Carrying them off where? What good are slaves once you kill the slavers? Valeria is no more. Karth lies beyond the Red Waste, and the 9 free cities are thousands of leagues to the west. And you may be sure the sons of the Harpy give lavishly to every passing call, just as the Bannisters do in Pentos and Norvos and Myr. They know that if they feast the horse lords and give them gifts, they will soon ride on. It's cheaper than fighting and a deal more certain. Cheaper than fighting, Dany thought. Yes, it might be. If only it could be that easy for her. How pleasant it would be to sail to King's Landing with her dragons and pay the boy Joffrey a chest of gold to make him go away. Khaleesi? Sir Jorah prompted when she'd been silent for a long time. He touched her elbow lightly. Dany shrugged him off. Viserys would have bought as many Unsullied as he had the coin for, but you once said I was like Rhaegar. I remember, Daenerys. Your Grace, she corrected. Prince Rhaegar led free men into battle, not slaves. Whitebeard said he dubbed his squires himself, and made many other knights as well. There was no higher honor than to receive your knighthood from the Prince of Dragonstone. Tell me then, when he touched a man on the shoulder with his sword, what did he say? Go forth and kill the weak, or go forth and defend them? At the Trident, those brave men Viserys spoke of who died beneath our dragon banners, did they give their lives because they believed in Rhaegar's cause, or because they had been bought and paid for? Then he turned to Mormont, crossed her arms, and waited for an answer. My queen, the big man said slowly, all you say is true, but Rhaegar lost to the Trident. He lost the battle, he lost the war, he lost the kingdom, and he lost his life. His blood swirled downriver with the rubies from his breastplate, and Robert the usurper rode over his corpse to steal the Iron Throne. Rhaegar fought valiantly, Rhaegar fought nobly, Rhaegar fought honorably, and Rhaegar died. And we'll hear that quote a few more times in this as Danny will replay this scene in her mind over and over again.
Yeah.
Up next, Storm 24, Bran 2. Are you certain you never heard this tale before, Bran? asked Jojen. Your Lord Father never told it to you?
I like that chapter. It's one of the few Bran chapters that I could really get behind. I know what it is. I'm not a big Bran chapter reading kind of guy.
But that's where we learn all about the magic of the others, which is the
I
big
know,
mystery of the whole story.
I know. That's the odd part. I don't know if it's
Yeah.
just the way he writes Bran, or
Well, that's
just
definitely true. Other than the last Bran chapter where he's completely transitioned into omniscient God King writing instead of there were 5, including the shirt and the madness. I was holding them until end of chapter because of length of chapter. Oh, I appreciate that, Lizzie. Yep, we did get done in less than an hour, so it's pretty
yeah,
good
I
for how
know.
long
I'm
this one is.
surprised. But yeah, I don't know what it is. Like Arya chapters, I love Arya chapters. Jamie chapters, of course, I love Jamie chapters. Um, John chapters, I could take or leave. It just all depends on which chapter it is. Tyrion
Yeah,
chapters are always
he
good.
he deliberately writes Bran differently, and other than the last 2 Bran chapters, he's kind of starting to transition to the penultimate Bran chapter, and then the last Bran chapter, he's completely transitioned it.
Yeah, but
Love
I,
hearing about young Ned, says Chris.
yeah, that's the truth. That's probably why it's one of my favorite chapters. And
Uh,
the main reason it's probably one of my favorite chapters is it's Mirror telling, or whoever's telling the story, not Bran talking. You know what I mean? We're getting what somebody else says for most of the chapter, so it's not
that's true.
really a Bran chapter, but
There's
it
less
is.
there's less of him writing it as Bran. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
yeah. But
And actually, the part that he is writing as Bran is interesting because you're seeing how Bran is completely missing the point of everything.
yeah,
um,
Bran is
all right.
what? He's what, a year younger than Arya.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
He's,
So
I mean, Arya calls him the baby when he might be more younger than that. No, I think you're right. I think you're right. I think he's about a year younger because
yeah,
although it's funny that she calls him the baby when she's remembering the crypts.
yeah. Well, I mean, that was probably she played with the baby because Rickon wasn't
Uh,
born yet.
she thought it
So
was the baby ever up until Rickon was born, basically. Yeah.
yeah. So, but I mean, if she's almost 11, that would put him probably almost 10-ish.
Yeah, it's interesting because at one point George had made some quote about how abandoning the 5-year gap meant that meant that he was going to have a 12-year-old take over the world, which should have been a clue to people as who he thought was going to be, right? I
Yeah,
mean, clearly that ruled out anybody older than Arya when he said if a 12-year-old has to rule the world, so be it, or whatever.
yeah,
Um, that clearly ruled out anybody older than Arya from being who was going to wind up being the ruler at the end.
yeah. That's true. Actually, yeah, that rules out everybody but Bran, doesn't it?
Yeah, maybe Arya. Or Rickon. with the serious gap, I suppose. He
Yeah,
was
yeah.
going to insert another gap. But the point is to eliminate the 5-year gap. I guess it doesn't make any sense to say, yeah. So really, Bran and Arya would be the only ones that made any sense at that point.
Well, I think the main reason, I mean, he started the story young. He did certain things with young children in the story, so that can't be the reason for the 5-year gap. I think the 5-year gap was to where the dragons can grow bigger, and
Well, I still wonder if part of the point of the 5-year gap was that he was trying to base Dany on the was it the Red Sky, the mythical Irish High King. So well, I've mentioned this before, but I find it kind of funny. So Toodles has this theory that Danny is literally a child of 3, where you have like two fathers and a mother.
mm,
Which of course we think that the chimerous type stuff that maybe that's true of Tyrion, right? But
right,
anyway, that the Red Sky, and there's some other name, and Irish, of course, that's kind of more what you'd find this under, but
yeah,
but anyway, he's supposed to be the product of like, not only is he the product of incest, but he's supposed to have like 3 fathers, and he's supposed to he's supposed to be like 1/3. He's supposed to be like 1/3 look like one of his fathers, and 1/3 look like another one of his fathers, 1/3 look like another
Oh,
one of his fathers.
that.
And then, but
Mm.
the interesting thing about one of the interesting things is he specifically is supposed to, and he's also a mother coupling guy, so he's also into incest himself. But anyway, um, he he he's supposed to take power after a 5-year gap.
No.
So anyway, I do wonder if maybe Tootles is right. Maybe Danny has more than one father. I don't know.
The whole incest part. I forget who I was talking to. It might have been book club or it might have been just the chat. It wasn't book club. I didn't make it there. I'm having chest pains this weekend. I think it was Friday during the day on the chat. Uh, uh, the theory is that Lyanna and Benjen might have been doing the Targaryen, but there's also a theory that Lyanna and Brandon might have been doing the Targaryen, and then that was the reason
Well,
that Brandon was.
Toodles was claiming that there may have been some sort of blood magic ritual with Arthur Dane and Rhaegar.
Mm,
That was his speculation.
uh,
So he's definitely a Rhaegar and he's definitely a Rhaegar and Lyanna Dany believer. But
yeah.
as are we, of
But it
course.
was just when you said incest, that got me thinking about some of the other theories that were involving
Sure,
Lyanna and Benjen
sure.
and Lyanna and Brandon. And because Brandon loses his damn mind um, when he's told that Rhaegar has abducted Lyanna. We're also, I think, told that Brandon was the only one that was outraged at the Tourney of Harrenhal, and I think Robert kind of joked it off. Uh,
Right.
so there are hints. I forget the guy. It was in one of my comments. He was started talking. Not my comments, somebody else's comments. But it was I think it was a comment on my comment, and he went into the whole kin's blood not being king's blood. It was kin's blood that's the key type thing. I don't know. But it was the theory that John is a Stark. He's the starkiest Stark that's ever starked because his mother and
Yeah,
father are both
yeah.
Stark.
I remember. I remember my brother first on his first reread. He said, "Oh, I think Lyanna might be John's mother." And I said, "What?" He goes, "Oh, and Rhaegar is his father." I said, "Oh, that's interesting." This was long before I ever tried to. In fact, it was my other brother who mentioned who told me after that there were all these theories online and stuff, and that I started getting the YouTube videos and Reddit and all that. Um, but I think
Well,
so. When people say that the only reason it's obvious is because we've had all these years, I'm like, no, no. That was like my little brother's first reread. I was like,
yeah. Well,
anyway,
it's funny when you're asking about that because season 1, Game of Thrones, Chris is asking me who's John's father, and I'm going off the black hair, and I find out about the in the books the king's got black hair. I didn't pay attention to John's hair color, but the black hair was the thing. So in the show, I'm like, well, his father's King Robert, and my son is like, I wouldn't stick to that one if I were you, kind of type situation. Because that I'm just going off the information that I had at the time, and
sure.
and I know that George is like, okay, the one requirement I have for Jon Snow, is that his hair is black. And why would he do that in the show when it's not that in the book? It's just it was weird.
Yep,
Sorry.
I remember you mentioned that before. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap up because
Okay.
we're right at
All right. Hump
the hour.
Day is brand two. I'm actually looking forward to this one.
Yeah, everybody likes that chapter.
Oh, excuse me. Sanjay, thank you for joining us, Mother. I hope you get to feel a better. I agree with Chris. Love hearing about young Ned. And I appreciate everybody else joining us. Liz, everybody. Um, I should be able to join chat today at 2 o'clock, like my time.
I was on book club on Friday.
I wasn't.
Bye. I was on book club
Bye.
on Friday.
Yeah.
I poked it in my head and read the Maester Wireless paragraph.
Well, I was sitting there cooking dinner, and was it cooking dinner? I forget what I was doing. I was in the kitchen. I'm looking at Robin, and I'm going like this, and then she gives me a look, and I'm like, so I haven't. This week is the week they cut all my back, and even though last week I'd been chatting more, getting back in the rhythm, doing things, trying to have some kind of structure so I don't spiral down in depression. And but just thinking on it Friday, I don't know if that's why I'm having to cut out my blood thinners to get ready for it. I don't know if that's why I'm having some chest pains. Um,
Huh.
but I mean, they're not strong. I'm not sitting there like I did when I had a heart attack. It's just when it happens, I try to take my activity way down because I want them to go away on their own. I don't like nitroglycerin. I don't like the headaches that come with it. So I mean, I just try to chill and relax and but I mean, I'd have preferred to have been on book club, but yeah, what are you gonna do? But I will
Yeah.
let everybody know Thursday
But
or Friday.
it was specifically the introduction to Maester Wireless was the chapter, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's probably your favorite part. But yeah, Chris said they got both chapters done. I'd even said
I,
earlier. I
I
said,
said that when I got in there. I was like, "Oh, this is the Maester Wireless chapter," and people are like, "What? What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Oh, let me read the paragraph." And I read the Maester Wireless paragraph, and
well,
then they're like,
I'd even
"Oh,
said that I wanted to see if I could continue book club in the living room if I could just keep Carter quiet to where I could stay on instead of doing my
in the
normal 2 hours. But it didn't work out that way.
in, in the off chance that somebody is listening to this who doesn't know what we're talking about, so Maester Wireless is the Maester who had been at Hardhome and then went back to Old Town and then disappeared on his way north, um, and um, and Cold Hands really sounds like he's a biology professor when discussing his cold hands with Brand and Mira and Jojen, right? And of
Yeah,
course, he's as they pointed out, it also makes a lot of sense that he's specifically good with Ravencraft, right? That would also potentially hint at him being a maester, and so we've got this mysterious maester who disappeared going north of the wall, centuries ago, and why are we told this, right? Why are we told that this basically the one guy who north of the wall who would be likely to sound like a biology professor.
yeah.
Um, yeah,
That's
so
what I
Goldell's
said,
like,
Nettles, when he
ooh,
first told me. Yeah,
yeah.
there
So
has to
that's
be a
courtesy.
reason for
Oh, this is
George.
Thunderclap's theory,
Mm.
and he's a fan of Girls Gone Canon and shared that with them, and they said it. So that's where it comes from.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there has to be a reason George told us about this Maester, what happened at
Right,
Hard Home. He went back
right.
to Old Town, and the last anyone was seen him, he was headed to Eastwatch by the Bay. There has to be a reason.
And it
And
always
we,
did seem kind of weird how he's like giving you this biology lecture, right?
yeah. And then I was telling you when you told me that the reason that chances are that he's dressed like a night's watchman is when you need fresh clothes and you're out there, chances are
Right.
a dead night's watchman is the easiest clothes that you can come by to put on. So it doesn't necessarily mean
Okay, so where is Benjamin?
uh,
Uh,
he's in
yeah,
Essos disguised as Dario.
maybe. Yeah, I do think that the Winterfell inheritance thing is kind of funny, right? In that you could potentially see, you could see, Catelyn mentions all these cousins, right? That there's lots of Stark cousins, mostly in the Vale, and
Mhm.
so so all the various distant cousins could show up and claim Winterfell, and then Benjen could like ask to take Stannis' pardon, right, as a deserter, and be pardoned by Stannis and take Winterfell, and then of course you have fake Arya, you could have real Arya, you could have real Sansa, you could have real Rickon, you could have real Bran,
Uh,
you could have
I just thought of
Right.
something. We have like Tyrick people gathering and possibly putting together last bloods of houses that they might need later on in the story. So who arranged for Tyrick to disappear could have
which we know is
also
Littlefinger.
arranged
Which we know
for
is
Benjen
Littlefinger.
to
Anyway,
disappear. Yeah. All right.
according to
We're
Dragon
over
Fans
our hour.
video. Anyway, yeah, we're
Yeah.
way over. Go ahead.
Yeah, we
Wrap it up.
started down a rabbit hole. It was pretty good.
Yep.
But
Fun
okay.
stuff.
I will see everybody Wednesday. Richard will see everybody Wednesday.
Sounds good.
Hope everybody's good. And we will see y'all hump day. Bye. Y'all take
Have a
care.
good one. Bye.
Have a good one, Richard.